Hey everybody, and welcome to the GameSpace Game Show. I'm your host, Steven Weber. Not just your host, but your only host. Your only lovable, lonely host, hosting solo. I'm gonna solo bro it tonight because this week we've had a bunch of scheduling conflicts, but GS2 cannot be stopped, and I shan't stop. Shan't stop, won't stop. So I wanted to still pop on and do the news with and for you guys, and also talk a little about some of the craziness that's happened this week, especially in regards to Arenanet and a couple Guild Wars 2 developers. So with that in mind, this is going to be kind of a pared down show. There's not going to be a lot of banter, obviously, but we are still out there in Twitch and YouTube land. So if you're out there and you're watching, you want to be part of the show, definitely hop on in and let me know what you think about this. But with that in mind, let's just hop on in and talk about what's going on in Guild Wars 2, what Arenanet has done, maybe a little bit of the backstory. So on July 3rd, narrative designer Jessica Price and Peter Fries, you can say it whichever way you want, but they've both worked at Arenanet for over a decade, so they've had long-standing careers. But they got into a little spat with a streamer who commented on Price's 29 tweet long Twitter, whatever you call it, tweet storm, I guess is what it might be called. The response from Price was nothing less than unappreciated. The tweet that she sent back reads, "Today, in being a female game dev, allow me," this is in quotes, "allow me, a person who does not work with you, explain to you how to do your job." So a lot of what it seemed like she was taking offense, possibly because she's a woman, and I know that women in the industry have had it kind of hard. But the major sticking point seems to be, in the clearest of terms, that at least initially, Price felt as though the mild attack which the streamer gave to her, which it wasn't like a big pounding hard attack like, hey, you're wrong, or you don't know what you're doing. It wasn't like that at all. Actually, after reading it, I didn't think it was that bad, considering what we've seen in the industry as a whole. But the attack was taken as some kind of sexism, which, as we've covered in previous shows, certainly is prevalent in gaming. So I'm not saying that sexism doesn't exist in gaming, but it wasn't something that the community at large, me included, believed was being thrown at Jessica Price on that tweet specifically. Now, I'm not saying that she's never gotten them, because she probably has, and it's kind of been building to the point where this last one was just like, that's the straw. But it wasn't something that the community believed as a whole, that the response that Price gave was the appropriate response. So after that tweet, more critical responses came pouring in. Price's response was simply to the community, "I'm not on the clock here. I'm not your emotional courtesan. Just because I'm a dev, don't expect me to pretend to like you here," which it was her personal Twitter. And that was essentially the tweet that the sources say led to her firing. So she got fired. And according to an article that was passed on over to me from our good source monkey Kiwi, it was reported that Arenanet knew of Price's outspokenness previously and appeared to be supportive of it originally. However, the forum statement by Arenanet co-founder Mike O'Brien reads as follows. Recently, 2 of our employees failed to uphold our standards of communicating with players. Their attacks on the community were unacceptable. As a result, they are no longer with the company. I want to be clear that the statements they made do not reflect the views of Arenanet at all as a company. We will always strive to have a collaborative relationship with the Guild Wars community. We value your input, and we make this game for you. And I think that that's kind of like the big tell here is you know, she was pretty rude in context, but you know, the players make the game, so to speak. So coming from top down, it definitely makes sense that he's going to take the side of we, the gamers. Now, Peter Fries, the other developer who was fired, he was suspected just simply of sticking up for price, which any good coworker would do. You know, some people have kind of thrown the backlash that he was kind of white knighting, but whatever you want to call it, you know, they were coworkers, so I don't think that he was out of line specifically in doing this. But all in all, this brings up a lot of different points, many of which may be unfair in the grand scheme of things, but still a very real reality that we currently live in. In the age of social media, our private accounts, I mean, our private accounts, all accounts, I mean, are they really private? And if not, where exactly is the line? The gaming community hasn't been known for its compassion in the broadest terms. I mean, if you're watching this on MMORPG.com, if you're watching this on GameSpace.com, wherever you're watching it, you've probably been the victim of some kind of harassment. We've done several shows on this in the past, and I definitely go back and watch those shows because we've had a round table of people who have experienced this firsthand, and in some cases people who have perpetuated this. And you know, I'm not free of that, because when I was younger, I definitely played into that, because that is kind of the stigma. In a competitive environment, you definitely have that. But harassment is a real problem, even if it's a minority of our amazing community, because we do a lot of fantastic things too as a community. But harassment's a really big problem. So on the one hand, was Jessica Price and to a lesser extent Peter Fries really doing anything wrong when they responded derogatorily to the content that was posted on their personal accounts? I mean, would you stick up for yourself on your personal account? And I guess, you know, in some form or another, it's a real question of, was she really sticking up for herself? Because again, the original tweet wasn't that bad in my estimation. It didn't seem like it was an attack necessarily. It was just an opinion that wasn't even saying necessarily that she wasn't doing her job, but it was definitely taken over a line because it was her personal account. Now, on the other hand, though, everyone who chooses to be seen in a public space, and that's you, that's me right now, because I'm in a public space, at least in any form, we're all under the microscope when it comes to judgment. A person who treats others poorly, be it on Twitter, which is not a thing, but if it was, it would be on there, and on Twitter, Facebook, at a diner, in a swimming pool, it doesn't matter. In some form, they represent their place of work. And she had on her profile that she worked for Arenanet, and she worked on Guild Wars 2. So, you know, when she comes out and she attacks people like that in whatever form, she's essentially, she's not representing the company in a PR way, but she is representing the company as she's kind of putting her face on it. Even though that it's a private account, she works there. She's advertising that she works there. In fact, everything that she wrote about the development leading up to it was kind of it was kind of geared towards her job at Arenanet. So perhaps in days long past, people could get away with a little negativity thrown around, like maybe if she did this to somebody in person in the day before cameras or something like that, she might have gotten away with it and just, you know, maybe face a little he said, she said on whether it truly happened. But here in the no holds barred ring that is the internet age, most of us can't escape bad decisions. And even the internet's greatest weapon, which is anonymity, it doesn't seem like it will hold back the sometimes all too critical hammer of justice that sends one person with a bad decision like Jessica Price to the unemployment line. Because maybe this isn't, we know that in the past she may have done some things like this, but it never crossed that line to get her fired. But now, in the age that we're in, she just one kind of tweet storm comes back to her, and she's out of a job. And it's not because of her performance, it's just because she got into a spat with a streamer. So altogether, where do we stand on the whole fiasco? I mean, what have we really learned over this whole thing? Nothing has really been made better. The customer isn't always right. We know that. And developers aren't customer service, or else they'd be in customer service. Maybe what needs to be learned is that with great developer status comes great responsibility. Those that aren't willing to take on the face of the company should truly make their presence private on Twitter, or not have an account at all if there's a risk they may say the wrong thing. So a spooky ghosty over here on Twitch is saying she got fired from her last job for going after a rival company for selling a book with rapist in its name. So I'm not even sure what to make of that, because if that's the case, I can only say that she would be spending all of her time on Steam just trying to be a social justice warrior. And you know, I don't use that very often, because, you know, I do believe that it's okay to be offended in some cases. But, you know, I think what happened here was just a bad decision on her part on taking a point way too far that wasn't meant that way. And all that being said, as a Guild Wars 2 player and a columnist specifically for Guild Wars 2 at MMORPG.com, I wish Jessica and Peter the very best. I hope they swiftly find a home for their talents. You know, what I don't know specifically what I can attribute to what she does at Arenanet or did at Arenanet, or if she was the only one that did it. But you know, I always hate hearing that stuff, that developers lose their jobs and things like that. And I think that in this particular situation, it was really tough, because we're seeing a lot more of that. You say something, you do something on Facebook, on Twitter, you lose your job. And it's really a shame. But I can't put the fault solely on the system or on Twitter or on whatever it is. And it seems like she's done this in the past, as a spooky ghosty said, that, you know, maybe she did get fired for going after a rival company for selling a book with rapist in his name. I'm not sure exactly. Maybe this is just a recurring theme with her, and maybe this is something that she's going to need to learn to manage. You know, I mean, sure, you might not want to apologize for you being yourself, but I mean, there's got to be a limit, or else you're just going to keep getting fired for inflammatory things that you're saying. So altogether, that's what's going on with Guild Wars 2, and we're following the story, even though the story looks, you know, dead, done, and we're out of it. We're still going to follow it, see if there's any more backlash, and I would love to hear more from Jessica Price for her point of view, which I'm not sure whether or not she's going to be able to give it, but I would love to reach out with her and get her on the show and get her point of view, because from here, it does look really bad in the sense that she was treating customers poorly on that hand. And I know that, you know, she's probably been through a lot with harassment and everything, but in this particular situation, I don't find that to be an excuse. So I would definitely love to hear more about it. I'd love to get more information about it, and that's kind of what we over at MMORPG.com do, not me specifically, but we'll see where this goes and how this plays out. So I did want to hit some other news points because, again, it's only me on the show this week. And there are some other pretty interesting news things going on. Unfortunately, now the first bit of news on our list this week is actually a tidbit of sadness. So Steve Ditko, the co-creator of Spider-Man and Doctor Strange, has died at the age of 90. I mean, he was 90. He lived a long life. While an unfortunate tragedy to lose a legend of his caliber, we at GameSpace, MMORPG.com, and my fledgling superhero channel, The Hero Signal, send out our condolences to his family and friends, and wish only that his greatness can continue to live on in the characters he's created and the people he's inspired. Now, of course, we're going to have another Spider-Man film coming out next year after. I think it's coming out after the new Avengers film. So we're going to, well, I mean, it's got to because he's dead right now. But but yeah, Tom Holland, a fantastic Spider-Man. So we're going to see how that goes. But, you know, really sad to hear, you know, Steve Ditko is gone and co-created these characters with Stan Lee himself. So definitely sad to hear that. On to some better news, though. If you're a Twitch Prime member, our lovable bird friend, who may or may not be out there, but Kiwi, an aspiring Amazon guru, she follows everything on Twitch and Amazon for us, and she's just really good at that kind of stuff, but not that it matters because this is kind of everywhere. She reminded us with an article on GameSpace that Twitch Prime is giving away free games every single day in July. So act fast, even though if you're just finding out about it now, there are some games that you missed out on. They did Pillars of Eternity July 4th, and it's gone now. So if you missed out on that one, you snooze, you lose kind of a thing. But there's still some excellent games to wait for. And again, they're free as long as you're a Twitch Prime member, which if you're not, you can currently get 30 days for free right now. They're just giving away 30-day trials. So some notable games that are coming up is Next Up Hero, which not only have I played it in early access, but I'm also going to be doing the upcoming review for it on GameSpace. I can tell you that it's probably one of my favorite action RPG games from an indie developer. It's pretty indie, but they have multiplayer, a lot of really interesting heroes. It's kind of endless, and you just keep going. So I'm really excited for you guys to get out there and try that one because I'm in the game, so you guys can definitely come play with me. It's well worth your time. The other notable games are Brutal Legend, Tyranny, and Broken Age, all of which are can't miss games. I mean, they've been around for a little while. If you haven't played them already, you're definitely going to want to play them. You have nothing to lose because it's free. If it's still July in 2018, there's games out there for you to download. So if you're in podcast land and listening to this and it's still 2018 July, stop the cast, go do it before you forget, because you definitely want to get these free games. They're only available, each game's only available for about 4 days or so. So they're not there for a long time. You really got to hit them as soon as they hit so you don't lose them. Let's see. Another thing on our news list, Intrepid Studios. You guys following Ashes of Creation? Because we are. According to the PR department, over this past week, 7 former Daybreak developers have been added to the Intrepid family as they push for an Ashes of Creation alpha by the end of the year. Now, normally just adding devs to your team isn't that big of a deal, but the reason why I wanted to put this on news for this week is because they're heading for Alpha 1 access by the end of the year. So if you want to get into Alpha 1, July is the last month to be able to get into or pay to get into Alpha 1. So definitely, again, if it's July and you want to get into Alpha 1 whenever it launches later this year for Ashes of Creation, which is one of the biggest MMORPGs that we've been following lately, then head on over to Ashes of Creation's sites, go check out Intrepid Studio, buy into it while you can. And then maybe, just maybe, we'll see you in Alpha 1. Intrepid also mentioned that they are planning on bringing on another 21 developers, so we're going to keep an eye out for that, see who the developers are, if there are any notable names in there, and what we can expect from them. But either way, I mean, you guys have like a few more months, and then Alpha 1's going to be hitting. You're going to actually be able to hop in the game and play this. So pretty excited about that, me personally, and you guys should be too. Also, this past week, you remember when Camelot Unchained was supposed to launch July 4th? Well, it didn't. It didn't launch at all. But don't fret. The guys over at City State Entertainment who are developing Camelot Unchained said that it's going to be delayed several days, or it could be weeks. They really didn't give us any definitive answer on that, but Camelot Unchained is closer than it's ever been, very heavily PvP focused, and that's really what people liked the original game for. So Camelot Unchained, if you're a PvP fan, you're going to want to check it out. And I know saying it's closer than it's ever been doesn't really make any sense, and it doesn't mean anything. I believe it. It's eventually going to launch when it launches, but they're saying it could be any time now. So we're looking for the 4th time beta release announcement. They've done it 3 times before, 3 times announced, 3 times forgotten, but 4th time's a charm. I don't know. That seems to be kind of a thing lately. Lastly, on our news list, anyone out there playing Bless still? I hear there's people that still play it, but NeoWiz, the developers of Bless, put out their newest producers letter and said basically, hey, we get it, guys. Optimization is poor, hacking is rampant, but don't fret, we're fixing it, kind of a thing. While they're taking responsibility for finding and permanently banning hackers on their own, they're encouraging the player base to take videos and send them on over to them so that they can help. So the player base can help catch the hackers, because whatever they have in place right now ain't cutting it. Hacking is still pretty rampant. The hacks themselves they're not really a new problem. They existed in the other versions. They knew about them before launching the game, even though the game actually launches in August. But all the hacks that are happening, I mean, how hackable is it? It's all client side. All these things are just simple things that you could do client side, and they're not going to really change that. They really can't change it at this point. So I guess it's just a mitigation thing is what they're trying to do, more than actually fixing the hacks. They need your help. They're just going to get rid of the hackers, permanently ban them. But hacks are still going to be there. People are going in there and messing with the INI files just for the performance issues. So I think that's kind of why they're taking these at the same time. Like, we want to dissuade people from going into the INI and messing with stuff, you know, so that they're not accidentally hacking or whatever it may be. But we'll see how that goes. You know, there was a severe drop-off from when Bless launched and where it is now, and they only have another month whenever they're actually going to release the rest of the content, and they're still having a lot of problems. So we're going to see what happens. I'm going to definitely try it out again next month whenever it officially launches and see where they've been, or where they're going, and let's see what happens. But I don't think they're going to get rid of those hackers so easily. So Godspeed, NeoWiz. That's pretty much it. I'll do a short version of plugs, since plugs is what we do at the end of the show generally. Last week I teased that I've got a little side project that me and some of the fellas from GameSpace are working on, and while it may be still a little early to reveal as we get ready for the full launch of what we're doing, it's never too early to get the word out. So about every month or so, we've been devoting a lot of our time to superhero games. We've had probably like a show a month about hero stuff. And we have a lot of shows coming up where we're not going to be able to do that because we're going to be focusing on other games on this show. So We wanted to talk about superhero shows also. We wanted to talk about comics and movies and merchandise and just geek out on superhero stuff. I mean, as you can see, that's kind of my thing. So we decided to put out a podcast. It's a monthly podcast dedicated directly to just the superhero fandom that's just been going crazy lately. So if you want to be the first to know when we launch that, if you're interested in hero stuff like I am, if you want to just hang out with me and the boys and talk heroes, you can follow us on Twitter at the Hero Signal 1 or on Facebook at the Hero Signal, all one word. And we're going to try and keep up with the tremendous amount of stuff that we find about comics and shows and everything. We've already started posting some news there, and we're going to ramp that up as we head on over and get that podcast out. It's gonna launch probably at the end of the month, so just keep an eye out for that. And of course, if you haven't yet, head on over and download our podcast for this show, not this particular show if you're watching it right now, or if you're listening to it on the podcast, you've already done it. But check out all of our previous shows, some of which can only be described as incoherent insanity. And yes, that's an endorsement. We're on all podcasting platforms: iTunes, TuneIn, Stitcher, Spotify. I don't know what other ones there are. I don't even know what other ones exist, but we're there. We're in all of them. In fact, if we aren't, send us a message on Twitter at GameSpace.com. And tell us we're not on one of these channels or one of these podcasting platforms, and we'll argue with you about it, because we love to argue with our fans. And lastly, what am I playing this week? Well, I have a Switch review of Mushroom Wars 2, which is a weird mushroom strategy game that will be hitting, the review hits tomorrow, either tomorrow or could be Sunday, could be Monday, could be any day of the week. I don't know. That's how much I know about when it will hit. It's whenever Bill gives it the okay, but it's going to be good. So if you're a Switch owner that loves strategy games almost as much as you love mushrooms, you'll want to read this review, because I'm not going to lie. It's charming. It's a charming game. That doesn't mean that it's a fantastic game, stellar 10 of 10, but again, if you're into some strategy with mushrooms, this is where you want to be. So unless there's any other questions from the court out there in Twitch land, since this is a solo cast, and let's hope I never have to do a solo cast again, because even I'm sick of myself right now and talking so much. I usually never talk this much, but I thank everyone out there on Twitch land, podcast land, and the YouTube grotto for spending some time with me. We should be back at full strength next week with our full GS2 team, with the same GS2 time and the same GS2 channel. So if you guys are around next week, pop on in, and we're going to have some amazing shows coming up with some primo developers. We're actually going to be doing another Pantheon show pretty soon. We're going to get all Brad McQuaid and Chris Perkins back, because they always have a lot to talk about with their new games. So we'll be posting information on that show as we continue. It's probably not going to be next week, but we'll let you know as soon as we know when they're going to be on. But I appreciate everyone for joining in tonight, and I'll see you guys next time. Thanks all.